In the beginning of our movie today, we meet a very well-known criminal named Liam McAvoy, and we learn that he dies at an old age in prison, and with him, a global empire of assassination and theft collapses forever. In the following scene in New York, we meet a married couple named Dan and Jessica. They are very excited because they are celebrating their wedding anniversary. Jessica goes to the bar at their favorite hotel and arrives before her husband. Dan talks to her on the phone and tells her the room he booked, and he climbs the hotel wall, hoping to surprise her. When Jessica enters the room, she is surprised and very happy with the luxurious necklace she finds placed on the bed. While she is amazed by the gift, Dan appears behind her and completes the surprise. As they celebrate the years they have lived together as a married couple, their eldest son Kyle and their 4-year-old younger son Max spoil their evening and force them to return home to deal with the dog because he is sick. The two return home without complaining because they love and value their family more than anything, and they love helping their children and spending time with them. A few weeks later, around Thanksgiving, they take their family and spend the holiday at Jessica's parents' house. They enjoy themselves very much with their family. The house is filled with games, jokes, and clutter, and everyone is happy. Fortunately, Dan manages to avoid many problems. During dinner, their eldest daughter, Nina, who is studying journalism in London, video calls them to experience the family atmosphere with them. Nina is very happy when she learns that her mother has received a job as a fitness director at Ohio University, and she encourages her to accept the job. But Jessica is afraid to tell her husband to move from the country he loves. Before they hang up, Nina advises Jessica to talk to Dan as soon as possible. A few days later, Dan and Jesse are putting up house decorations for New Year's Eve. Dan is upset when he finds out Nina has decided not to return home, so he tries to persuade his wife to make her change her mind so they can celebrate the holiday together as one family. After that, Dan yells at his son Kyle for hacking the school network and deleting his classmates' grades as a prank on the school, and he warns him to focus more on his studies. The next day, Dan goes to his job at a security consulting company and finds a job offer in London, and he accepts it immediately, hoping to kill two birds with one stone. He decides to take his whole family and go there so they can celebrate New Year's Eve with Nina, and he finishes his work as a security consultant at the bank. After that, Kyle drives them all home, with Dan supervising the driving. He informs everyone then of the idea of traveling to London and spending New Year's Eve with Nina. Dan tries to convince his family of this plan and finally succeeds, but Kyle gets distracted when he hears the news and is about to hit a car and cause an accident. A few days later, the whole family travels to London and are enchanted by the holiday atmosphere. After that, instead of waiting for Nina to come to their hotel, Dan decides to surprise her, so he takes the whole family and goes to her apartment. There, Nina is shocked when she sees everyone, especially since she didn't have time to tell her boyfriend, Omar. Then Nina introduces them to Omar, and everyone accepts it normally except for Dan, who appears here to be a very overprotective father. After that, the whole family goes out with Omar, and they go sightseeing. Omar impresses the young men and shows them his moves and acrobatics. Unfortunately, Max decides to imitate Omar but falls on his face. Dan and Jessica run to him. Dan is annoyed and was looking for an excuse to yell at Omar, but Omar accepts the matter calmly, and he also advises the worried father not to be so afraid of his children, telling him that this is what ruined his relationship with his father. The next morning, Nina meets her family at the hotel and sits with her mother, encouraging her to tell Dan about the Ohio offer as soon as possible. Dan has a meeting at the bank at that time. A little later, Nina takes her siblings and goes to a park, hoping to give her mother some time to think and organize what she will tell Dan. On the other side, Dan, while assessing the security vulnerabilities, meets a man named Aidan Clark, who asks him to identify the bank's weak points by breaking into it. Dan takes Aidan to the isolated corridors that lead to the vault and breaches a series of security systems. Finally, the two reach the vault area. Dan lets Aidan in, then grabs him by the neck and chokes him, demanding to know who he is, because he caught a clue that made him realize that this man has nothing to do with the bank and has a hidden motive. But at that moment, Aidan shows Dan a photo of a kidnapped Jessica, and this forces him to completely change his approach with him. After that, Aidan calls Dan Sean McAvoy, and we understand that this is his old criminal name, and he turns out to be his half-brother named Finn. Then he tells him that their father, Liam McAvoy, had an affair with the maid, but then betrayed her when she told him she was pregnant. He also tells him that he was always jealous of Dan/Sean because Liam acknowledged him and loved him, and he has hated his father for abandoning him for a long time. Then Finn tells Dan to open one of the safety deposit boxes, which contains the key that will lead him to Liam's kingdom of crimes. Then he threatens Dan that he will expose him and reveal his past, and he tells him that he has evidence that can send him to hell if he tries to contact the police. After that, Finn threatens Dan's family and forces him to take responsibility for the bank robbery so that they can both get out of the bank. Thus, Dan is forced to take Finn hostage as they leave the bank. As soon as they exit, Finn tells his men to let Jessica go, and she gets out of the car and runs towards Finn, who notices a pistol taped to her hand. At that moment, the police arrive, and Jessica and Dan flee the area, trying to hide the pistol and go to their children. On the other side, Finn, while driving with his men, notices that Dan stole the key, so he decides to go to the hotel where he is staying, expecting him and his wife to go there to pick up their children. After that, Dan calls Nina and tells her to gather her siblings and Omar, and tells them to wait for him there and throw away all their mobile phones. Later, the children and Omar meet Dan and Jessica, and then they all start running away from the place. Dan tells them about Finn and explains that they have an evil uncle. Then the family manages to escape from Finn and board a tourist bus, but unfortunately, Finn tracks them onto the bus and holds Dan at gunpoint, demanding the key. Dan trips him, and then the two confront each other. After a long fight, Jessica goes to help Dan and grabs a fire extinguisher and opens it in Finn's face, blinding him for a moment. She also tries to hit him, but he unfortunately takes her hostage. When Dan sees this, he tries to save Jessica and buy his family time while they figure out what to do now, so he throws the key out of the bus. This forces Finn to get off the bus. After that, Dan takes his family, and they sit in a restaurant to catch their breath for a while. Here, Dan tells them that when Finn takes the key, he will be able to access Liam's encrypted device, which contains a huge amount of money, names of criminals and assassins, and a global surveillance system. He tells them that the best solution now is to leave England as quickly as possible. When Nina hears this, she is terrified and starts thinking about how she will leave her life behind like this and leave Omar and stay with them. At this time, Finn arrives at Liam's vault in Paris and shows the guard, Vikram, the key to let him in. After that, Vikram takes Finn and goes to the office where he uses the key he has to access the device. When we return to Dan and his family, we find that they have reached France and are going to Paris, hiding in a cattle truck. After that, the family goes to Dan's ex-girlfriend, a retired intelligence officer, and they go to her house to hide there for 2 days until they see what they will do next. While they are there, Dan asks Svetlana to send a message to Liam's device, hoping that they can contact Finn and resolve the differences between them. Svetlana agrees to help Dan and prepares dinner for them. During dinner, she gets to know them and concludes that Dan got married to avoid suspicion. Then she forces the children to finish their food, even though they don't like the meal. A little later, Dan manages to arrange an appointment with Finn at a local museum, and he goes with the hope that he will reason with his brother and solve their problems together. But Finn tells him how difficult and lonely his childhood was, and he rejects the idea that he and his brother should work on their relationship and try to fix it. On the contrary, he starts a war between them. Then he returns to the mansion and contacts many assassins and agrees with them to kill Dan, offering them a large sum. Before Dan prepares for this war, he decides to raise his family's morale and takes them on a boat trip to see Paris during the New Year's period. At night, while they are sleeping, Dan sits thinking about the day he spent with his family and tells how happy he was with them. Svetlana offers him alcohol, and as they sit and drink, he tells her how his family is the most important thing in his life. But suddenly Svetlana feels guilty and confesses to him that she contacted Finn and told him their location to get the reward that Finn had set. While Dan is trying to comprehend this, she tells him that she also put a drug in the alcohol he drank, hoping to help the people who are coming to kill him. Dan is terrified and starts banging on the house, trying to wake everyone up to get them out of the house quickly before the criminals arrive, but he trips and falls due to the effect of the drug. Svetlana then informs everyone of the situation and gives them her old car so they can escape. If you enjoyed the video and want a part 2, let me know in the comments. See you in the next video. Peace.